Hey everyone, welcome to Crime Weekly News. I'm Derek Levasseur.
I'm Stephanie Harlow.
We're back to you with another episode. Last week we talked about Tyree Nichols. This week we're going to talk about a case that may be familiar to some of you. To be fully transparent, I've seen it come across my Twitter feed, but I really didn't know much about the case until Stephanie kind of gave me some of the information this afternoon, and that's Heidi Broussard. We're going to go over some of the facts of the case. We're going to talk about it, talk about what it means, talk about what we can learn from it, and we'll go from there. But we do want to hit you with a little bit of news at the top of Crime Weekly News, and Stephanie's going to tell you about it.
Oh, I'm going to tell them?
Usually you throw it to me, so I'm pulling it on you.
Oh, so you're returning the favor.
You're welcome.
So we actually wanted to mention the fact that Criminal Coffee, which is our coffee company, if you don't know, now you know, Criminal Coffee just released new merch. And if I do say so myself, it's really freaking cute. Like, even if you don't drink Criminal Coffee, or even if you don't like coffee, the merch is still super, super cute. And we think you guys should check it out. I know I just ordered a bunch of it myself. Hoodies, crew necks, mugs, cute hats, scarves, all sorts of things, knit caps. I'm just in love with every single piece in our Criminal Coffee merch store. So you guys should definitely check it out. I know that we'll be linking that in the description box. So look at it, see what you think. And I mean, while you're like in Criminal Coffee mode, you should definitely reorder some Criminal Coffee because I know you're probably running low.
She said it. She said everything right there. criminalcoffeeco.com. Like she said, everything on there, including, I know some of you buy the whole bean, the ground, I should say, because you don't have a grinder and you don't want to go out and spend a ton of money on a grinder. We're actually offering a hand grinder that says Criminal Coffee right on it. It's a pretty cool little hand grinder if you want to try it out. Promise you, they're both really good. But if you want the freshest, best tasting coffee, you have to order the whole bean and grind it as you use it. That's Stephanie can speak to that way more than I can. She's more of a coffee connoisseur. I only learned that as of recently, but there is an actual difference that you taste when drinking it. So if you're someone who wants to get into good coffee drinking and you want to try our coffee at its best possible level, you definitely want to order the whole bean, get the grinder. You don't have to get our grinder, get any grinder, but get a grinder, grind it up as you're using it. Promise you it's definitely worth a little bit more work that you have to put into it.
100%. I completely agree. It's fresher that way. It tastes better. It's, I think the ground coffee. Anyways, I'm rambling. The ground coffee tastes really, really good too, but I do notice a difference. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, we nitrogen seal our ground coffee too. So when you're getting it, as long as you're using it within 2-3 weeks, it's still going to taste phenomenal. But if you're someone who wants to buy it in bulk, the whole bean will last up to 6 months if you store it correctly, and you can grind it up as you go. So you're getting that best tasting coffee 3-4 months down the road. It's, you get more for your money too. But anyways, like you said, we digress, not here for that. Wanted to let you know about it. Our Patreon members already know about it. If you're not a member of Patreon and you want to get these episodes ad free, you can just go over to Patreon, check us out, and you get a discount code for all our merchandise and our coffee. So win-win over there if you want to check it out.
Okay, so let's actually dive in here because what I did talk about Heidi Broussard's case when it happened on YouTube, and I think that it blew up the way it did because of timing. Because if you think about it, it was the summer of 2018 when Shanann Watts, who was pregnant, and her 2 daughters, Bella and Cece, disappeared from Colorado, and we all know how that ended. So when Heidi Broussard and her 3-week-old daughter Margot vanished from Austin, Texas on December 12th, 2019, it obviously was like very reminiscent. A lot of people felt like, oh, we've seen this before. And immediately they all started to suspect Heidi's fiance and the father of 2 of her children, and basically saying like, this guy did it, and it was very instantaneous. And, at that time I was like a little judgmental of it. I was like, we shouldn't just jump to conclusions and think it's immediately the husband. But in hindsight, like, I feel terrible that it happened and people went after him so hard. But I do understand why it happened. Like, we were kind of all still in the clutches of what happened to Shanann and her children. So it was almost natural that we should have thought that when it happened, that it was the husband. And let's be honest, it usually is the husband. When a woman goes missing, it's very often the husband. So we all see these patterns, right? We see them replaying in cases.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is one thing we can take out of this, especially in the true crime community. just because of historical data, you can't always assume that's going to be the case going forward. So like you said, in many of these instances, when you have something similar to this, it is usually the husband or the boyfriend, someone who is close enough to them, someone who would have a motive for potentially wanting to hurt them, whether that was intentional or accidental in the heat of the moment, whatever it might be. But we, in the true crime community, we are guilty of sometimes automatically in the court of public opinion saying they're guilty, even before we have a chance to hear any of the evidence, like within days before anything's been released. The quote unquote experts out there already know what happened and can't understand why the police haven't made an arrest yet. You got to let the factors play out, because from what I was reading about this case, and you're going to tell us tonight about it, there was a lot of incriminating evidence towards a particular person in this case. And so it became very apparent that the boyfriend or the husband wasn't involved. So I would think all of us would be good to, it would be a good practice to reserve judgment until facts from the actual organizations investigating it, not necessarily the media, come out with some of their findings, because it might give you a clearer picture of who may be involved and who may not.
Yeah. And unfortunately, in Heidi's case, it wasn't just a mother missing. She wasn't on the run. She wasn't trying to escape. She was no longer alive. And her actual killer, who ended up not being her partner, it was just sentenced this past week. So I kind of wanted to come full circle and talk about that now. But yeah, Heidi and her daughter, who's just 3 weeks old, a newborn, Margot, they went missing on December 12th, 2019. And a week later, law enforcement found Heidi's body in the trunk of a vehicle parked outside the Houston home of Megan Fieramusca. So Megan had actually been a longtime friend of Heidi's for over a decade. They'd met at some church event, and they were pretty good friends. They were close friends, longtime friends. And apparently Megan was also pregnant at the same time as Heidi, but law enforcement would actually discover that Megan wasn't pregnant at all. She'd just been pretending to be pregnant. They actually found Heidi's infant daughter inside the home of Megan Fieramusco. Luckily, Margot was alive and well, but Megan was claiming that Margot was her daughter, a baby named Luna, a baby that she'd given birth to on the same day that Heidi and Margot had vanished, which was December 12th. And Megan told the police that she'd given birth at a birthing center in the Woodlands, but she also couldn't tell the police what specific birthing center she had used. So obviously they are suspicious at this point. They see a baby that looks like Margot in the care of Megan Fieramusco, and they're like, what's going on? You have to prove that you gave birth to this child, and she just couldn't do it. So they got access to Megan's internet history, and it was discovered that she'd searched Heidi Broussard's name at least 162 times between November 11th and December 18th. And on December 14th, she'd also searched bodies found in Austin, Texas, because she was, I guess trying to see if there was any news about what was going on with Heidi and Margot's missing person case. Additionally, they found out that Megan's cell phone was pinging in the area of Heidi's apartment complex at the time of Heidi and Margot's disappearance on December 12th. And Megan lived in Houston, not Austin, so she couldn't explain to the police why she was in Austin on that day when she was supposedly, giving birth at a birthing center. So surveillance footage from Heidi Broussard's apartment complex, where she lived with her fiance Shane Carey and their children, it showed Megan's car driving around the complex at 9 a.m. on the day that Heidi went missing. And a witness who lived in the apartment complex said that she saw an adult woman carrying a small baby and walking over to a parked car on that day. This same witness said she also saw another woman exit the car and greet the woman carrying the baby, and then the two women and the baby got in the car and they drove away. Now, when police got near the car that was parked outside of the place where Megan was living, the house where Megan Fieramusco was living, they could smell human decomposition, and they found Heidi inside a black duffel bag in the trunk. She'd been strangled manually with Megan's hands as well as with a dog leash. It was discovered that Megan was notified on the morning of November 25th that Heidi was going into labor. The next day, she drove from Houston to Austin, and she was in the room with Heidi when she gave birth on November 26th to Margot. And all the people in the room were saying that Megan was acting really weird, like Heidi gave birth to the baby, and then Heidi held the baby, and her fiance held the baby, and then her fiance's father held the baby. And I guess Megan was being weird and she was like, oh, let me hold that baby because I have to go. So like I need to take this baby from a family member. And Sean Carey's father was like, this was so weird that a friend of Heidi's was like interrupting this family time. And what was she even doing there? Right. So obviously, I don't know why. I don't know why Megan Fieramusco did this, whether it was some sort of like sick attraction to the baby, whether she developed like an obsession with Heidi's baby, or if she just needed a baby and Heidi happened to have one. Because what ended up happening is it looked like Megan was dating this guy, Christopher Green, and they had actually broken up the previous March, but Christopher Green was under the impression that Megan Fieramusco was pregnant with his child, right? She told him like she was pregnant with his child, and he said that he had touched her stomach during her pregnancy and it had felt hard, but he'd never seen her bare belly because they weren't dating anymore, so they weren't intimate. And the police actually found Christopher Green, Megan's boyfriend, on December 19th in the parking lot of Target. He had just left Target because he was buying like baby formula and baby clothes and stuff for like his new daughter. He basically said one day he came home and there was a baby there, you know? There was a baby when he came home and he was like, well, this baby needs food and clothes. So he went to Target and the police grabbed him in the parking lot and they were like, hey, Heidi Broussard's missing and her baby's missing too. And they showed him a picture of Margot and he was like, holy shit, that baby's at my house right now. And like, I thought that was my baby, basically. So obviously, Megan Fieramusco was taken into custody. She was charged with murder. And just last week, 37-year-old Megan Fieramusco was sentenced to 55 years in prison as a result of a plea deal between herself and the Travis County DA, Jose Garza. She'd originally been charged with capital murder, but Garza claims that he feels the plea bargain is appropriate and also saved Heidi's family decades of post-litigation. Judge Selena Avarenja told Megan that she had destroyed an entire family and that no sentence could make Heidi's family whole again. She said, quote, I think it's difficult, if not impossible, to find justice and any sort of resolution to this horrendous crime. Miss Fieramusco, the fact is that by your actions, you have deprived an innocent child, an innocent baby, the opportunity of growing up with her mother next to her, end quote. And keep in mind, Heidi also had a young son and a young stepdaughter too. So yeah, she was taken away from her fiance, her children, for really no reason. And then Heidi's fiance, Shane Carey, had said, quote, it just makes me angry that these beautiful kids don't deserve this. Heidi didn't deserve this. She was the best mom, the best person you could ever meet. She had like 25 best friends because everyone wanted to be her best friend. I don't understand what happened still. I don't understand why, end quote. And I think that's where a lot of people are like stuck on this because they don't really understand why Megan Fieramusco would do this, especially to like somebody she'd been friends with for a very long time. And I mean, obviously that is a question that I think, you know, I was talking to you a little bit before we started recording and I said, I think if somebody takes a plea deal and they get like a reduced sentence for what is undoubtedly and, you know, objectively a terrible crime, they need to explain themselves and they need to say what their motive was and they need to like give their reasoning, even if it seems ludicrous to the rest of us. Like we need to hear why you thought this was a good idea or why you thought you would get away with this, you know? And I don't know. What do you make of this?
Well, I agree with you. You said it before we started recording. I definitely agree that there should be more information provided to the families as far as the motive behind their actions. Maybe there was some off the record stuff that didn't make it into court where officers provided them with more details about some of the things that they discovered, interviews, etc. But I think overall, first off, she took a plea deal and you might think like, why? This is a slam dunk case. Why wouldn't you just pursue it? It's for the family. It's not for the offender. It's for the family. So they're not sitting in a courtroom for the next 3 to 5 years because in this particular case, Megan has nothing to lose. Just fight it and keep fighting it. She's probably going to be found guilty, but she'll get 2 or 3 more years in a court system. Hopefully something's done wrong and she gets out on a technicality. So they don't want to risk that. And 55 years is a very long time. Is it long enough? Of course not. but I think they're looking at it as she's 30, you said 37 years old?
Yeah, 38, 38, I think, or 37 around there, yeah.
38 years old, so she's going to do most of that, obviously. If she survives prison for that long, it's not going to be very long after, unless someone's going to live into her, to be 100, but I feel like the family was probably on board for this, which is why they went forward with it. They probably explained the options to them and said, hey, this is what we think is best, and they went with it. As far as the why, from our perspective, I think it's like Occam's razor. You can look at it just from what it looks like, where it seems to me like they were friends. Megan might have been jealous that Heidi was having a child and she was wishing it would have been her. And she followed her along through her pregnancy with this intent that once she had the baby, she was going to kill her and keep the baby.
That's crazy to think the whole time, that whole pregnancy, that she knew that was going to happen. Because I also kind of thought something similar. Like, was this the plan from the beginning? That you were going to pretend and like be next to your friend through her whole pregnancy, knowing you were going to like murder her and steal her child. I can't even fathom that.
Yeah. And I mean, she had been looking up Heidi. If you remember, you were saying from November 11th to December. So it wasn't like the day of. About a month prior to her giving birth, she was already starting to research her and look at her online presence, her digital footprint, because at that point she had probably made a decision like, I'm not going to get pregnant. Do we know if Megan was she physically able to get pregnant?
I don't know, I don't think
that would explain the motive really quick, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't think she was actually ever pregnant. I almost wondered if it had something to do with her boyfriend, Christopher Green. Like maybe they were going to break up and she was like, you can't break up with me, I'm pregnant. And he was like, yeah. Oh, okay, you're pregnant. Like, I guess like we have to kind of at least live together and raise this baby together. And then she was like, oh shit, like I need a baby now, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably a big part of it, whether it's for the boyfriend or just for herself, where she was, even her presence in the labor room and the way that the family members had said she had acted. That sounds like somebody who's not in the right mindset. Obviously they shouldn't be there. I don't care how real close they are, unless they're like sisters. She shouldn't have been there in the first place. So it's a really strange situation. I'm glad that they were able to apprehend her as quickly as they were, and that in the relative to how long sometimes these cases can take, this was a pretty fast turnaround. Where we talk about 4 years here. This was 2019, you said? Mm-hmm. So we're not too long in how we see some of these cases, how long they take to play out. So condolences to Heidi's family, her children. Obviously, it's not going to bring them back. I'm glad to see that Margot is not going to be raised by the woman who murdered her mother. You know, because there are situations where that's probably taken place, whether we know it or not, where there are children who have been abducted after their parents were killed or their parent was killed, and they're living with the offender and they don't even know it. As we're talking right now, it's pretty scary to think. So Margot's not going to be one of those children, and it's going to be a hard life for them to realize that they were, how she was taken from them. But I think there is always some, I don't want to say the word closure because I know everyone hates that word, but there is some piece that can be taken from the fact that the person responsible for putting you in the situation you're in is locked in a prison cell. I do think that over time that does hold some weight for these victims and their families.
How many years does she get? 50?
55.
55. So what does that make her if she ever gets out? Like in her 80s?
She's going to be like 92, 93 years old.
Okay. So it's basically a life sentence.
That's what I'm saying. That's how they're looking at it, I think. Now, I think the argument, I mean, we can get into the all the little tic-tacky stuff where, I mean, if she has good behavior and when would she be eligible for parole?
See, that would be an issue for me. That would be because this is extremely premeditated, right? Like we're talking maybe like almost a year of premeditation. If you pretended to be pregnant at the same time as your friend, knowing the whole time you were going to kill her and steal her baby, like you had plenty of time to be like, this is a bad idea. Like this is a horrible, I'm a horrible person if I do this. Like this is the worst thing I could ever do. Months and months and months for that to occur to you. And she like kept with it. So for me, like this is extreme premeditation. She should never see the light of day again. She's not right. Yeah.
Down in the comments, if you guys know, I'm sure it's out there somewhere where there was probably a date put on when she would be eligible for parole. And maybe that was part of the agreement where she had to do, I know federally you have to do 80% or 85% of your prison sentence before you're even eligible for parole. And just because she's eligible, let's say she's eligible after 40 years, whatever it is, that doesn't mean the parole board has to let her out. they can look at it and say, you know what, based on the circumstances of this crime, we see no need. We still think you're a danger to society. You're going to stick around for a little longer. You know, it's one of those types of things. So we can't predict the future, but I do think the family was probably like, hey, we got her. It's killing us to sit in this courtroom and look at her and have to hear this over and over. And we're being re-traumatized every time we come here.
Right.
So I'm sure it was a conversation between everyone where they said, yeah, we just want this done with. We just want her put in prison and we want to move on with our lives, raise these children and try to think about her as little as possible.
Damn. Yeah, it was a rough case. It was a rough case when I covered it. It was very upsetting. It's one of those, like, you can't trust anybody kind of things, right? Because women be out here like, our husbands are killing us, our best friends are killing us. Like, yeah. This is why I don't leave the house and I don't have friends. You can't trust anyone. So I'm glad that Megan is seeing some justice, though. I am glad that finally, it's been a couple of years, she is being sentenced and she's going to sit in prison and hopefully get some mental health help, because I definitely think she needs some therapy.
Yeah. And there's really nothing. Sometimes we'll have like a lesson, right? Like things you can do to better protect yourself. There's nothing that Heidi could have done differently.
Nothing.
And we don't even know if this was the case in this particular situation. But if you do have friends or family members around you and they're displaying things behind closed doors that may give you some red flags, go with your gut, go with your intuition, ask people about it, you know, bounce it off some different individuals as far as what you're seeing, how you're perceiving it, if they would the same way. Again, most of the time you're not going to pick up on it. It might be subtle, but you never know. There might be something that's raising your spidey sense that you bounce off someone else, or you just decide on your own to maybe separate from that individual a little bit more. And it may not be as extreme as this situation, but still, down the road, it could be something dangerous. So it's always good. You know, you can replace friends if you need to. If you feel like there's something not completely on and maybe something's a little off and you should create some distance with people in your life, there's nothing wrong with that. And you can always come back to it if you decide to change your mind.
I've cut off full ass friendships based on my gut before, and I don't regret it. So yeah, listen to yourself. Your instincts are always going to reign supreme. You know yourself and you know what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And having some weird ass lady come in your room when you're giving birth and try to hold your baby before family members, this is a red flag. So, well, that's it for today, I guess.
Yep, that is it for Crime Weekly News. We appreciate you guys checking it out. This is Wednesday when this is dropping. So if you want to see part 2 of our Crime Weekly series on Daniel Robinson, that'll be out on Sunday for YouTube. And this is strictly a YouTube thing. So if you're not listening on audio, that's when you want to check it out if you want to go to Sunday. But if you're an audio listener, the second part of Daniel Robinson will drop on Friday. So there you go. That's kind of what it is. We appreciate you guys checking us out, coming back every week. Keep weighing down in the comments below. And by the way, I look at the analytics a lot, and I'm sure this is a common thing, Stephanie. You'll probably like completely interject here and be like, yeah, just welcome to my world. But there's a lot of subscribers for Crime Weekly. And I think we're coming up. I'm almost in the dino costume at 200,000 subscribers. But what I notice is, and again, it's probably a common thing, 200,000 subscribers, but we don't have a ton of people with their notifications on. And we get over sometimes 200,000 views, but we only have 108,000. So if you have the time, take a second, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you have your notifications on, and leave a thumbs up if you can too, because again, we'll have 100, 200,000 views on the video and only, 10, 20,000 likes. So that's only 10% of you. Simple math right there. Is that a common thing?
Yeah, I always say, like, so many people are not subscribed but watching, so just subscribe.
Consistently. Yeah, check it out. It means a lot to us. Like I said, as you see in these, we don't even have advertisers in these, we just have the Google monetization, but the more people who like it, the more people who comment, we see it now. I'm learning as I go. You get bumped up into the YouTube recommendations as far as videos just by liking the video. So we'd appreciate it. It would really help us out. We hope you're getting something out of it, and we will see you next week. Until then, stay safe.